I want to take you through a punchy attack by Adhiban from India, played in the World Team Championship taking place in Kazakhstan. Before we go any further, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, then do please click on the subscribe button below. It's free to subscribe, and click on the bell for instant notifications for when we post a new video. Okay, so this game, Adhiban playing board 1 for India against Maghsoodloo from Iran, the current world junior champion. This is an interesting contest. Well, not just this game, but the whole event. It's not the Olympiad, it's a 10-team all-play-all tournament. Russia and China have fielded very strong teams. The USA is playing but don't have their best players. India is playing, don't have their best players, but still both those teams have pretty good lineups. So far Russia are in the lead with 3 wins. India not far behind, 2 wins and a draw. So this game was played in the India-Iran match. Iran have a very young team and very interesting to see how they get on. They really are a rising nation in the chess world. So Adhiban, well, we've met him before on the channel, and I'm a big fan of his style. Very enterprising, loves attacking. So it's a C3 Sicilian, but we transpose into actually a French Tarrasch variation. And you might recall that this variation with the isolated queen pawn was played in many games by Karpov and Korchnoi, for example, in their 1974 match and in 1978 as well. And since then, many others, of course, have played it too. Yusupov is a great exponent of this system with black. Lots of piece play for both sides. Here I quite like bishop b6, but bishop d6 actually has a better reputation, but bishop b6 is tricky. Here, bishop d3 I think is the most testing move, setting up some threats on this diagonal, but bishop g5 also a popular move. And now the bishop doesn't take on e7 but comes round to g3. So this is a very popular idea. So the bishop comes to g3 to exchange off the bishop on d6, obviously a very good piece. And once those dart squared bishops are exchanged, then white has a greater positional control in the middle, for example, over the d4 square. So a very common maneuver. So Maghsoodloo plays knight f5, and then instead of exchanging off the bishop, plays knight takes. So both sides have gained something through this exchange. So obviously you can see that Maghsoodloo now has this lovely bishop without an opponent. So you never know, one day it might be able to sneak to this diagonal to attack through f2 to the king. That's a possibility later on. Well, what's Adhiban got? Well, this structure is actually quite nice for white, because that pawn on g3 blocks out any attack on this diagonal. Controls f4 as well, that's nice. Also gives the king a little escape square on h2, so white has solved the background problem straight away. So yeah, both sides have gained something. Knight e7 played here, a6 also possible, but knight e7 is okay, which obviously protects the pawn on d5. And now g6, so it makes sense just to make sure that these squares are covered, and also to cover the light squares. So it means that the king at some point should have a safe square on g7. Remember, that makes sense because there's no dart squared bishop to attack the king. instead of the king trying to live later on h7. So you can see it's quite a positional struggle with both sides manoeuvring very carefully here. And very often in these kind of positions I've seen moves such as rook e3 and doubling on the e-file. Perhaps that bishop drops to d3. Sometimes it goes all the way to e2 to f3 to put some pressure here. I mean, it's a very tight struggle. Both sides have their trumps here. But what I find really interesting now is that Adhiban changes the nature of the position completely. So instead of playing in a very positional way, he blows open the position in a way that, I can't remember Karpov playing in this way. c4. So basically, this just shatters the pawn structure in the middle, opens up the position completely, so that now the minor pieces are kind of floating around without an anchor. So play becomes very tactical now. So this gets taken. I suppose there is the possibility perhaps of taking, sometimes pushing to c5 as well, actually. c5 could be an awkward move to meet. So pawn takes pawn, and now rook c1. So it's clear that white is going to regain this pawn, and he might recapture with the bishop, he might recapture with the rook, depending on how black plays in this position. In a sense, white is using his lead in development, because this bishop has yet to come into the game. And that means that the rooks aren't yet connected. And this is what makes it awkward for black. Also, if we look at that king, which was hoping to be nice and snug on g7, now that that diagonal is opened, then there are more tactical possibilities for white here as well. So a very interesting practical decision. Now, if you run this through the computer, it still thinks that black is okay, but basically the path to equality is very narrow. You have to play precisely. So queen b6 is liked by my computer. I suspect that Maghsoodloo was concerned about knight a5 and this knight coming back to take on c4 to attack queen and bishop. But apparently black is okay in this position. I mean, that is not an obvious sequence of moves. And even here, I'm thinking, is this so clear? Maybe we just protect this knight. Got to watch out for a6 and b5. Well, it seems to be okay for black, but not an obvious continuation. And there are other moves here are possible. Maybe rook takes. Still got to watch out for that move a6 actually. Okay, coming back to this position, Maghsoodloo didn't play queen b6, but instead went c3. This was taken, and then queen b6. So I think he must have been worried about that move knight a5, because obviously knight a5 no longer possible in this position, because it's simply en prise because the rook is blocking the queen's line. But rook d3. Now, when I mentioned before about once the structure disappears, the pawn structure disappears, then these minor pieces are kind of floating without support, and you can see that's what is happening here. And this is already looking uncomfortable for black. You can see that there's going to be a discovered attack soon on that bishop. Maghsoodloo played a6. The bishop didn't retreat, but knight c2. Threatening rook takes bishop, and after that one goes, then that one would be en prise. So it's already a little bit uncomfortable. So the bishop drops back. Rook takes knight. Pawn takes. Well, there's no immediate way through for white in this position. If queens were exchanged, then you'd have to say, well, the two bishops plus semi-open file. I know white is active, but you'd think that black should be okay. But with queens on the board, now that changes the situation completely, because you can see there are potential tactics against the king. So knight e3, this one starts to float into the middle. It's looking dangerous. If, well, when I see a move like knight here, when followed by knight d5, you know, I want to play bishop e6 immediately to try and control that knight. But then the next knight comes in to hassle the bishop. And this is very uncomfortable. You wouldn't want this one to float away here. Suddenly we've got, well, we could probably just trap that bishop in, and yeah, it looks horrible. And don't forget, this knight may swing over here as well. Nasty. Well, Maghsoodloo played rook takes, and now this really is asking for it, because once this knight swings in, it's very unpleasant. And white has this wonderful rolling initiative. A check. Can't block with the f-pawn. It's check. So the king steps back. And now Adhiban comes in for the kill. And rook takes. He's in. Threatening rook h7 mate. And now it's gone. It's gone. Rook takes bishop. If the king steps up, then rook g8 is mate. Rook f8. And now a discovered check. Knight d7, and that was the final move of the game. It's check here. We're also looking at the rook. Not very nice, and with the knight as well. And if queen takes queen, rook takes rook check, little intermezzo, and knight takes queen. And in this position, white is, well, already a knight up, and there's probably more to come, because that bishop is on prise, and knight here followed by knight check, king. Let's just show this, come on. If the bishop moves, we've got knight check here, and knight f6 is checkmate. Well, what a blistering attack and a wonderful initiative, all set off by that very unexpected move c4 in its position. Untypical, one sees it occasionally, but I think it upset Maghsoodloo, because the whole rhythm of the position, the whole nature of the position suddenly changed, and he wasn't able to adjust. Great win by Adhiban Bhaskaran, and if you click in the info tab up there, you'll find some more games by him on this channel. He's always worth watching. He produces some great stuff. And check out his 99 seconds interview as well. That's fun. Thanks for watching.